Hey everybody, today we are going to dive into how to set up your sub account in High Level. So ultimately, we are first going to need to be in the agency view. If you have just set up your account, it may have prompted you to go ahead and set up your first location. So if that's the case, you need to click on sub accounts and you will see that location that you just set up. If you don't see anything on this screen, then it means that we've got to set up the sub account first. If we do see it, we can just click on this switch to sub account button and we can go ahead and hop in. We also can click right here and we can select the sub account from the top left. If we want to add a new sub account, we're going to click on add new sub account and we're going to follow the prompts. A couple of things to know. It is going to by default land on the vertical snapshots. If you do not have access to any other snapshots, you could test some of these out. However, I would recommend that you start with the blank snapshot first. You can still go back and load these into your account, but right now, you don't know what's in these, and you don't necessarily know if it's going to fit exactly what you want to do. So I really recommend to my students that they get my snapshots because they are developed in a very specific way and they are shared with them based on what they actually need. So if you have imported a snapshot, then you're going to click on imported snapshots and you'll be able to see what was imported. So if you've got that snapshot imported already, you could go ahead and select that. You can continue and you can basically create your sub account using that snapshot. If you have your own snapshots created and you want to create that sub account using your own, you're going to select own. But for now, we can just click on blank. Then we're going to see a map. So if you have a physical location, go ahead and type that in. It's going to pull up your business, ideally. And then we can select it and it's going to pull all of the contact information from your business profile online and allow you to set that up. So that's very easy. If you do not have an address that you can do that with, we can click on add account manually. We're going to go ahead and put in our account info, our general info, etc. So this is the account info. This is not necessarily your profile info or your user info. So fill this out based on the business as a whole. Once you're done, that sub account is going to be created and you will see that in the sub accounts tab or in this drop down. So now we're going to hop into that sub account and go through the most important settings. So a couple of things to keep in mind. High Level is absolutely amazing, and they are always changing and evolving to give us the best possible user experience. But because of that, that means that things do often change. So I really want you to keep that in mind as we go through these tutorials. You might see something that looks slightly different than what's on the screen. That doesn't mean that you cannot still follow along with the tutorial. What I really want you to do is keep your eyes open for certain words. So the button might look different or the button may have moved, but it's still going to be called the same thing. They don't often change the language that they're using when they refer to certain things. So just always seek out that button or that tab that is going to be titled in that certain way to get you back on track. That being said, I will try and update these as much as I can with the rate that they have been making changes over the last year or so. It definitely can be hard to keep up with every minor change that occurs. So if there is anything that actually makes the video inaccurate or impossible to follow, I'm absolutely going to replace that as soon as I can. But just keep that in mind. Things might look slightly different in the future when you are watching this. So we are going to go to this bottom left where it says settings. I've been a user of High Level for about 5 years now. That has never changed. It's always going to be on the bottom left. These are the primary settings that we need to go through in order to set up our sub account and get it ready to be used. The first thing we're going to land on is the business profile. This is your business's information. You want to make sure your phone number, email, etc. is done. But most importantly, we want to check the time zone. So if you are generating leads in a variety of time zones or appointments in a variety of time zones, this is critical. Make sure that this is in fact your time zone. Then we can select what language is this account going to be in. So if you are not speaking English or your clients are not speaking English, you can go ahead and change that there. We've got authorized representative. That can just be you. We've got some basic contact information here. And then we've got some general settings. So a couple of general settings that we want to look at. Allow duplicate opportunity. I typically do not allow duplicate opportunity. This is personal preference, but there's not really very many reasons why I would want that. And in fact, it could cause a lot of confusion. We do want to try and merge Facebook contacts by name. A lot of times you will have somebody already in your system, but if they send you a Facebook DM, we want to add that information to their existing contact. We don't want to create a new contact. That doesn't mean that it will always recognize that this person is with this profile. That is definitely something it's going to attempt to do, and it does work most of the time. But just keep that in mind. Disable contact time zone. This is not something I'd recommend. This basically would prevent a user from selecting a different time zone if they are in your system trying to schedule an appointment. Again, I don't really think there's a good reason to do this. We've never turned it on. Doesn't mean that may not apply to you, but just keep that in mind. You can also mark emails as invalid due to hard bounce. This is a personal preference in certain ways. A hard bounce can occur even if there's not anything wrong with the email. It could just be a server error at the time. So keep that in mind. But if you would like to turn this on, that is just fine. Validate phone numbers when first SMS is sent to a new contact. Okay, this is going to add an additional charge, but it can ensure that the phone numbers that are in your system are good phone numbers and that they can be texted. It's going to prevent texting from going out to landlines and things like that. So this is something that you could turn on, as well as verify email address when the first email is sent. So this is that email validation that we would have looked at in the agency account settings. This is the charge. So you can see it is a really small amount per contact, but there is an upcharge for that. We can also have make SMS compliant by adding an opt-out message. If we have this turned on, it is going to automatically add this to your text messages, which says reply, stop to unsubscribe. We can customize that. Same thing with the SMS compliance. So if you are going to be adding a signature to your own text messages and adding this language to your own text messages, you do not need these turned on. This is basically to ensure that you are compliant every single time, even if you forget or don't know what you need to do. Ultimately, you're going to learn what you need to do as we go through the A2P verification process. We also have make email compliant by adding an unsubscribe link in your email. This is, again, also something that you can turn on. If you have it turned off, we can still have unsubscribe in our email. This is basically forcing every email, every text message to have that compliance information. So if you would prefer not have to worry about it and check those boxes off, that is a-okay. Now we've got contact duplication process. Are we going to allow a duplicate contact? And what is going to be the primary information that is related to that contact? We are going to find existing contacts based on their email first and their phone number second. This is typically what we're going to leave on. However, we have found that so many of our contacts have additional emails. Phone numbers do tend to be more consistent. That being said, there are people who have separate emails and separate phone numbers. So this is not going to work 100% of the time. Even if you have allowed duplicate contact turned off, you still might end up with duplicate contacts depending on the information that they use when they opt in. If it's a different email, different phone number, there's no way really to merge those. But I might recommend that you select phone as the first contact and then email as the second contact, because we do typically see that the phone numbers are that primary piece of connected information. We also can turn on missed call text back here. This is personal preference. We can set up missed call text back in a much more specific way in our workflows in the account itself. So if you would rather just turn it on here, then go right ahead, and then you don't have to worry about it in the workflows. If you would like to upload a company-wide voicemail, then you can do that here. It needs to be an MP3 or a WAV file. It's got to be relatively short, but you can go ahead and do that here. You also have the opportunity to do that at the team level or the My Staff level. So if you need to do that for each individual person, you can do that in the My Staff tab. This would be that company-wide voicemail. So that's all we have on the business profile settings. We're going to hop into the additional settings, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, we are in the My Profile tab of our sub account. So My Profile is going to be your personal profile information. So you as a user are logged in right now if you're going through this training, and you are going to see your profile on that My Profile tab. And here are some of the things that we're going to do here. So the first thing is we want to have our basic contact information. We can change our password. Now we can enable a signature on our messages. So if you want your emails to have a signature, this is where you're going to do that. So we can upload an image. I typically like an image as my signature. That's just me personally. We can add a link in there. We can just type that out with text only, no images. And then we can say, do we want this to be required on all of our outgoing messages? Or do we just want to have it going in that first message when we are communicating with somebody? Then we can also say include the signature before quoted text in replies. So this will also show that signature throughout your replies if there is a thread. Now we've got the integrations section. This is where we can integrate some of these things for you as a user. If you want to connect your Zoom account, Outlook, or iCal, you can go ahead and do that here. Now we've got user availability on the right-hand side. Our meeting location. So this is going to be for this specific user. Keep that in mind. You can set the location at the calendar level, so you do not have to do it here. However, if you know that this team member or you yourself, if you know that you have a personal Zoom link and that any Zoom meeting that you have is going to be on that personal Zoom link, you could put that in as a custom meeting location. You also could connect Zoom so that every new meeting that's created is going to be sent out based on this specific user. You also want to make sure that you do select the time zone. So I have team members that are in multiple different time zones. It's very important that their time zone is selected in their profile. And then we've got available hours. So again, these things can be done at the calendar settings level, but this should be the availability for the individual. And it's going to ideally be the most broad availability that you can set. So what I mean by that is if I know that I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, then I'm going to put Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That doesn't mean that my calendar will be open completely Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We're still going to be able to sync a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar or block things out in the calendar specifically. But this should be my most overarching general availability. If you know that somebody only works Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 1, then just set Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 1. And that's just going to reduce the amount of scheduling errors that happen. So whatever that most general availability is, that's what you're going to do. We need to configure our calendar or connect our calendars through the integrations tab. So if it's a Google Calendar, that is where we're going to go. If it is Outlook or iCal, you can go ahead and connect them right here. So what that means is the individual user who wants to connect these things, they need to be logged in and they need to be on that My Profile tab. You cannot do this for them under the My Staff tab if you are the owner or the manager. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to go ahead and hop into the additional settings and we'll get down to calendars. We'll talk a lot more about availability. We'll get down into integrations. We'll talk a lot more about how to add things. The next option that we've got inside of your sub account settings is going to be payment method. You do not have to add a payment method necessarily. If you do want to add a payment method for the company as a whole, you can go ahead and do that. We are going to skip over that right now. My Staff is where you are going to manage team members. So as I mentioned in the agency level settings video, Anybody who is an agency user or admin that has been added to that sub account, we're automatically going to see them in here. But we can also add employees right from this screen. So if we want to go into user info, we can add people. This will be pest@test.com. Then we're going to do 51. Password, we'll go ahead and give them a password. This is also for our signature, enable signature on outgoing messages. So these are the same things we saw in our profile, but this is going to be for a team member. You can set this up for that team member. Now, user permissions. These are the same user permissions that we looked at in the agency level settings. So those same options are going to apply. You can turn the toggles off. You can turn toggles on as needed. Again, this is typically going to be done based on the role that somebody has within the business. Salespeople are going to need things like appointments, conversations. They're going to need contacts. They'll need tags and potentially settings based on my experience. They're going to need opportunities. Depending on what you're selling, they may need invoicing. They may need to be able to look at payments, etc. So this is a case-by-case basis based on what you want to allow someone to see and what you want to allow someone to do. So please select wisely. Then we've got our user roles. This is going to be a user or an admin. I recommend that everyone is set to be a user. And if you run into an account or an issue where you need somebody to be an admin, you can address it from there. But as a whole, everybody should be fine as a user. If you create someone as an admin, you're giving them a lot of control over the data in your sub account. So just use that very sparingly. Then this is going to be the personal voicemail settings. So we already looked at the business profile tab where we can upload a company-wide voicemail. This is going to be that voicemail for that specific user. And now we've got our user availability. So in the same way we did that in our personal profile, we can go ahead and do that here. Again, most general overarching availability. Everything else can be set up specifically in those calendar settings, but time zone and our days of the week and our general timeframes should be in here. If we have a PMI or personal meeting ID from Zoom, we can put that here, or we can go ahead and connect Zoom or Google Meet. It also can be a phone number or an address if those are phone calls or in-person meetings. And if we have integrated the calendar, whether that is a Google Calendar, Outlook, or iCal, in the integrations or the My Profile section, we're going to see those calendars here. We don't see them because nothing is integrated yet. So make sure you do that in the My Profile tab or the Integrations tab so that you can then see those settings. Pipelines is the next thing that we're going to take a look at. So right now we have no pipelines in this account. We are going to load in a snapshot into this account. That snapshot has already got the pipelines that we need, but we can create a new pipeline. If you are using my snapshots, don't worry about creating new pipelines yet. Focus first on just reviewing the pipelines that have already been created for you, and then potentially editing those names based on what needs to be done. We could give this pipeline a name. We could call this lead. We could say book call, no show. Then we could have follow up and one. So you can have whatever stages you want, but you're just going to click on add stage. This is going to allow you to see them in a chart view. If we want to delete them, we're going to click on delete. And if we want to move them around, we are just going to use these arrows. So again, if you are using my snapshots, please do not add additional functionality essentially to the name. So if the name is booked call, don't change this to booked onboarding appointment. So don't give it a different meaning. If it's no show, we're not going to change that to first call completed because now it has a totally different meaning and automations are connected to your pipelines if you are using my snapshot. So just if you need to add something new, you're going to click on add stage. You're going to give it a name. You're going to put it where it needs to go. And if you'd like to delete a stage, that's fine. But again, I would recommend that you do not do that until you've gone through your snapshot and you understand what is actually in there. Now, let's go ahead and get into calendars. So calendars is going to be something that most businesses use very heavily. There are several different things that we are going to need to walk through when it comes to calendars. Calendars are very important for most of the people I work with, as well as for myself. And we also have some really cool new features that we're going to get through, which includes the service menu, the rooms, and the equipments.